Welcome to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. The podcast that covers all things about humans, technology, and particularly the bits in between.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. This is going to be a different type of episode where I'm really keen to explore sort of different types of organizations that can be centers or catalysts for human factors involvement and learning more about them. We spend a lot of time on this podcast talking to experts in human factors and sharing their experiences. But I guess one of the gaps that I've sort of realized is that if you want to get involved in different types of organizations, different type of sectors, how would you actually go about doing it? And in many places, things like trade organizations, membership organizations, and things like that are a really good place to start. So really the focus on this episode and a couple I've got planned in the future is kind of engaging with those people who know these organizations inside out to tell us what can we do to engage and help and just really learning more about the scope. So today's organization that has very kindly agreed to lift the bonnet on what they do is Aerospace Wales. And as the name suggests, it's an organization that focuses on the aerospace sector and is focused on Wales as a geographic area. Now, as a discipline, human factors has had a lot of success in the aerospace domain. The design and development of things like cockpit systems and the displays and the subsystems involved within that, the design of passenger cabins, and looking at how things like the processes and procedures of how people exit the aircraft in an emergency, how does crowd behavior influence that type of thing, and also when things have gone wrong, to be able to assist in the investigation into why incidents and accidents have occurred. So one example I use on a regular basis is the Kegworth air disaster in 1982, on how it was found that an incident initially attributed to pilot error had a much deeper root cause, with a lack of organizational communication, a lack of training, to name but a few of those factors. So the aerospace domain has been a leader, I think, in being able to investigate and learn from this and employ human factors in a really meaningful way. But there's always temptations to sort of revert back to perhaps the way we were and look at a technology-specific solutions. And we've seen some more recent events, which I won't go into name because I'll probably get into trouble one way or another. But we can't rest on our laurels, and we really need to be pushing this human-centered design thing through. So it's really brilliant to be able to learn more about the aerospace domain in Wales and how it's organised. And I'm really delighted to welcome the Director of Aerospace Wales, Rachael Blackburn. Rachael, welcome, and thank you for making the time to chat to me today.
Thank you, Barry. It's lovely to see you today, and look forward to sharing what I know, and hopefully it is a benefit to some of the listeners today.
Perfect. So let's kick off from the top then. As you see it, what is Aerospace Wales?
So Aerospace Wales is the national trade body in Wales covering the aerospace, defence and space sectors. So all companies that are involved, whether that be from manufacturing the wings, so we have Airbus in Broughton in North Wales, they make all the aircraft wings for your commercial airlines that are flying across the world. And then we have a big defence sector in Wales. So we've got the likes of Raytheon, also in North Wales. We've got Thales. We've got a whole remit of companies filling that whole spectrum. And then we're also heavily involved now in the space sector. So this is relatively new and emerging. So it was one of Boris Johnson's dreams was to have a rocket takeoff from the UK. That never quite happened. But what did happen was a lot of investment was put in by UK government into the space sector, and luckily they recognised that our track history as Aerospace Wales shows that we were in a good position to work on the space sector in Wales. So what we've done is we received funding from UK Space Agency and Welsh Government, and we've set up Space Wales. And I believe you're going to have a future episode with my colleague, Dr. Rosie Kane, who will explain what's going on in that sector with you, because it's very exciting. So I'm sticking to aerospace and defence, not so much the aviation side, which is what you alluded to in your intro, just because we're a really small, intimate team and there's only so much we can do. So we have 200 member companies, as I say, they vary from the primes, the main organisations, BAE Systems, Airbus, so on, down to smaller SMEs that are working in their supply chain or might be servicing into that, that sector, such as recruitment companies, legal profession, etc.
So really, then you're almost you're the main focus then, to bring large and small companies together within Wales to basically look at this sector.
So I joined in 2016. I can't believe it. Sort of 8 years ago now. Time's flown by. And I believe my remit was to make connections.
Yeah.
Because it's not so much the old adage of it's who you know, not what you know, but it is genuinely about bringing people together and letting them connect face to face. There's nothing better than meeting face to face, shaking the hand, looking people in the eyes, and saying, this is what we do, and we think it would be a benefit to you and your organisation and what you do. So that is probably at the heart of everything I do. It's trying to make those connections, give companies opportunities to engage, to be able to showcase their expertise and capabilities on a wider stage, give them opportunities they wouldn't have on their own. So that is what we try and do, is actually more human factors now that I've started thinking about it than we ever really realised.
Cool. Okay. So you talk about your specific role then, in terms of, you have this idea about making connections, but as I mentioned in the intro, you're now the director of Aerospace Wales. What do you do on a day-to-day basis? What is that role all about?
Good question, because no 2 days are ever the same. And that is the beauty of working with 200 member companies. So you always have some member companies who want nothing more than a certificate on the wall to say, we're members of Aerospace Wales, we're in your trade directory, your capability matrix. That's enough for us. And then you have others that want to engage much more meaningfully. So they may want to get into a new supply chain. They may be looking at diversifying from traditionally they've been in the automotive sector, for example, and with everything going on there, they're now thinking, oh, aerospace and defence could be a good fit for us because it's high value manufacturing. We've got the right skill set. So it's talking to those people, seeing how we can make those links and connections and help them with their aspirations. One of the things we did during COVID was we set up an MRO hub group. So that's from maintenance, repair and overhaul, which is a really big subsector in Wales. And what we recognised was that some of these smaller companies couldn't bid for the contracts on their own. But actually, if they worked with some of what they traditionally may have seen as competitors, if we could make them see that there were synergies within their businesses and that they could actually offer something greater than what they could individually, then that could be a really good boost for the economy in Wales. So we set that up during COVID. So we've got 12 companies now in our MRO hub. We meet with them monthly to make sure they're progressing. We're just trying to facilitate that group now. So it really varied. Yesterday, I held a Meet the Buyer event with the parent company MBDA, and we had over 60 member companies present. And it was Meet the Buyer 15-minute appointments as well as a general members meeting overview. So there's quite a lot of prep for that, and then there'll be quite a lot of follow-up afterwards. Every day is varied, which keeps it interesting, intriguing, and makes sure we never get bored or complacent.
So I guess you can't have gone to school thinking, I'm going to become director of Aerospace Wales. How did you get involved in this current role? How did this come about?
So I never had a defined career path in my head when I left school, and went to university, kept it quite vague. I did a business and finance degree. I specialised in marketing and international marketing. So one of my first roles after university was working for what was then called Trafalgar Health, now called Skanska, the big civil engineering company, working on projects for them, putting in the tenders, the quotes, doing all that marketing material. So I started off doing that, and then when I was in my early 20s, I actually got a virus that affected my heart. So I was spending a lot of time on sort of building sites, hard hats, and I kept on having these dizzy spells and fainting. It really wasn't very good. I love that job. But my mum had a family business,
Right.
and this was the start of the kindly but pressurized nagging, Rachel, when you were going to come into the family business. And that family business was retail for hair, makeup, wigs, hair pieces, perfume. And I was such a tomboy. I still am probably at heart a tomboy. Never really bothered with makeup. And I thought, oh, well, this pressure, family business, been in the family for 50 years. When are you going to join us? So I went and went to night school, learned about makeup, became a qualified makeup artist, manicurist, that sort of thing. And I was like, I quite enjoyed it because I was learning, and it's always nice to feel like you're pushing your boundaries and doing something different. So we opened a shop in Chester, and it was brilliant. The first 12 months, setting it up, running it. I had a back room where I did makeup lessons. I was called to do a few catwalk runway shows. It was brilliant. And then I had a customer called Christine, who was head of the Manchester Transvestite Society. And she explained to me one day that this was this was late 1990s.
Yeah.
There wasn't YouTube. There wasn't RuPaul's Drag Race. There was none of this happening. And she explained to me that she still felt that she looked like a man and she couldn't turn to anybody to help her do her makeup and her hair and everything else. So I had a back room, and it's where I did the makeup, and it was nice. It was private. And this started a whole new revenue stream of people would come and they would learn how to do the makeup in a more feminine way to accentuate their plus points. And it was, I have to say, it was very lucrative as well, because if I was doing their makeup, I was then selling them their makeup, their hair pieces. And of course, you want to smell feminine, to get a nice perfume as well. And so that was all really interesting. But at the end of the day, your shop is open 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Sundays is before Sunday opening. So luckily we have Sundays off, but Sundays I was going buying. Evenings were spent doing the accounts. And I thought, I don't say something now, this is going to be the rest of my life. And actually, that's not what I want for the rest of my life. So I broke the news to Mum that this isn't going to be for me forever. And she was like, do you know what? And I'm kind of ready for early retirement. So let's just say goodbye to the whole lot of it. I think she got her head around it. So I spent a bit of time then looking for what I wanted to do next, what would intrigue me. And it was really hard because when you've been your own boss as well, you're used to setting your own hours, and you're thinking you're going back into working for somebody else or working for a big organisation. And then I saw an advert with Wrexham County Council who were looking for somebody to work in economic development. And I thought, that sounds really interesting, because that sounds like you're going out and you're helping people, but in a different way. So I took a job with them and I was only there 12 months before I was headhunted by what was the Welsh Development Agency. Yep. So I went and worked for them, looking after the larger companies in the Wrexham, Flintshire, North East Wales area. They then merged into Welsh Government. So I was there then with them, again, still looking after those larger companies in North Wales. And that's when I started account managing Airbus, Raytheon, the big players. And I was like, ooh, aerospace is interesting. And I started to think this is igniting an enthusiasm and a passion that I just didn't know I'd have. So it was more by accident than anything else. And then the job came up. Paul Lindsay, my predecessor, decided to retire. And I'd worked with the Aerospace Wales Forum at events. So when we went to Farnborough, Paris Air Shows, that sort of thing, they were there. So I knew the guys, and I knew I need to pick up the phone and ask them about this opportunity. And I sat down at home and I said to my other half, I really want this. And he's like, tell me about the job. And I'm like, well, it's kind of vague. And I think I've got an opportunity to make this job what I want it to be.
Yeah.
And he's like, but you're a civil servant working for the Welsh government with a really good pension, and you want to move to a job where there is no real security, because we're on a Welsh government do still fund us, but it's a limited amount, and we have to reapply for that funding every 3 years.
Yeah.
So it was jumping from job certainty to the unknown. But I was like, where am I going to go in Welsh government? It's I've done what I want to do here. It's time for me to do something else. And luckily I had his backing, and he was like, go for it. So I was very fortunate that I had that around me to enable me to take the plunge. And that's how I ended up at Aerospace Wales in 2016.
It certainly sounds like you're really keen to grip an organization, but then put your own twist, and you're not scared of looking at different avenues, doing different things. I mean, that route from makeup with transvestites, which as you quite rightly say, at that time, it's not as mainstream as it is now. So you're not only looking at the revenue stream, but doing it in a way that is helping people who don't necessarily have their own voice, but also putting yourself in, or not an awkward position, but a challenging position, perhaps. Is that common theme throughout your career, do you think?
Barry, I never have time to stop and think. So this is actually quite revelationary to sit here and think, yes, you're probably right, that I do joke that sometimes I want to change the world. I want global dominance for Aerospace Wales. I want everybody to think, wow, Wales, what a place to come to live, to work, to do business, and what a great team of people they've got. But I have to say that I do recognise I could never do what I have done if I didn't have that team of people around me that had the faith in me to say, we trust you, Rachel, you go out there and you make it happen. And that is probably a continuous thing throughout my career path, that I have had people that believed in me and said, go for it.
Cool. Oh, that's fun. I think that's brilliant. I love that. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and chat a bit more about Aerospace Wales itself and how it's evolved and how human factors practitioners can get involved. So we'll be right back after this break.
You're listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. We wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you for your support. You can help further by rating us through your podcast provider, sharing us through social media, and telling your friends and colleagues. Let's work together in raising awareness of the value in putting users at the centre of what we do.
And welcome back, and I'm here with Rachael Blackburn, the director in Aerospace Wales, and we are going to dive into now a bit more about what aerospace is about and how it evolved, etc. So, Rachael, can you tell us a bit more about how Aerospace Wales came about initially and where it's got to today?
Yeah, so it was founded in 2002, and we're lucky to still have our original CEO, John Worley, with us. And he's one of those people I was just mentioning who's very supportive of me and sometimes my madcap ideas. So it was it sort of followed the route of a traditional trade body. So it did receive significant funding at that time from Welsh Government in its early years. And Welsh Government really recognised the value in having an organisation that wasn't directly tied to Welsh Government. It thought it could achieve more by being independent. So that is what it came about. We've grown membership since I came. I think we've trebled the number of member companies that we have. I say we've looked at expanding into the space sector. And I think we've probably moved from the traditional trade body model where people are just talked at and they're just included in trade magazines, etc. And I know this is going to sound really naff, but I'll say it anyway. I always think of Aerospace Wales as being like a family.
Yeah.
So myself and John and the new team that we've brought on board, I really do stress it's all about knowing the people. So it's knowing those organisations, those people who are in those organisations, and how to make those connections, knowing who's going to gel with who, and thinking, if I put these people in a room together, we'd have a smashing party. Or if we put these people together, they'd have a really robust conversation, which you sometimes need to stretch ideas, etc. So that is what we've done. And when I joined as well, I brought in what I term my ambassadors.
Okay.
So we've got a very small board, and I've kept that small, but surrounded us with a dozen ambassadors who come from the major primes and then all the subsectors of our industry, down to the SMEs and the smallest businesses, and those who are specialists in skills, those who are interested in logistics, those who are interested in the MRO type thing. So we meet monthly, and that's a really good way for us to be kept abreast of what's going on throughout the whole of the industry, and also for us to have opportunities to share best practice or to ask them for their advice on what they think we should be focusing on. So perhaps that's one of the things I've learned. Surround yourself by good people, but make sure you understand people and what makes them tick, because everybody is different. Everybody's a unique individual, and it's bringing out the best in them to help the bigger cause, I suppose.
That's really cool. So you touched upon that relationship with Welsh Government. So from what you've said, you're not just another department of Welsh Government. You are a separate organisation. They still feed you a certain amount of money, but actually not a huge amount. What is your relationship like with them now? What is it that they think they get out of you, and vice versa?
So I think on a personal level, I can only say as Aerospace Wales, we have a brilliant relationship with Welsh Government. And I think that also helps that I used to work there. So
Cool.
I've known the people in Welsh Government for, I'm not even going to try and work out how many years, far too many. And we very much work hand in glove with them. So when we go to events, we've got Farnborough Air Show coming up, which is probably the biggest air show globally this year. And their Welsh Government take and pay for a large stand. And then we take that opportunity to stand share with us out to our membership. And they have pods on our stand. So that's an example of where we work in harmony. And also with Welsh Government, we've just got a new First Minister, a new Cabinet Secretary in Wales. They need bringing up to speed as to what's happening in the industry. So we will help Welsh Government by giving them that information, writing papers. So it's very much a two-way stream, and we lean on them as well. So it's like Welsh Government still have a large pot of money to help companies with innovation funding.
Mm-hmm.
But our recent event earlier in the year, we had their innovation specialists talk to our members about how they can be supporting businesses. So if we're working with an inward investor, so somebody gets in touch with us, they're looking to set up in Wales, we know we need to work in conjunction with Welsh Government on those sorts of opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got an exceptionally good relationship, and we do work very closely with them.
And do you think that works? I mean, obviously, because we're part of the wider UK government as well, and all that sort of stuff. Do you think there is an advantage here in having Wales being such a, I guess, well-defined area, and it's not? Yeah, we've got what 3 million residents and stuff. Do you find that makes quite a nice package in that way to deal with, or would you like to be going back to what you said about taking over the world? Are you happy with just taking over Wales at the moment?
Conquered Wales, Barry, keep up. So yes, we've got a very stable situation in Wales. When you look at what else is happening globally or just in Europe, there is something to be said for the stability that we have here is attractive. Yes, there are issues that our members are facing on exporting, still post-Brexit, it's still causing issues. On skills and being able to recruit the right people. So there are elements that are always going to be a challenge. We work alongside working very closely with Welsh Government. We also work very closely with the UK Government. So we're not just focused on Wales. So there are 4 other regional associations as well working throughout England. We meet with them monthly. Again, it's imperative we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. And I also think it's really important that we try and learn from each other. And we also meet with quarterly with ADS, who are the national body. So yeah, we try and make sure that we are covering the whole of the UK, that our policies are aligned, that we're not just going off on a tangent. But I have to say, when we go to our shows in America now, Wrexham, the amount of people that come up to us and say, "Where's Wrexham?" So now even on our map of Wales, when we're in the US, we have a football in that top right-hand corner to show where Wrexham is. So on the world stage, we are getting known, not always just for our aerospace capabilities. Sometimes it's for Ryan Reynolds and our football, but and our Netflix series. But yes,
you make the most of it where you can. Absolutely.
exactly. Yeah.
You touched upon the sort of range of companies that you've got involved, but can you expand on that a bit more? So there's large primes involved, and then there's small SMEs like ourselves who are involved. What type of capabilities have you got within Wales that you engage with?
That's a big question, Barry. So, I mean, I could take you geographically around Wales, showing where we've got different elements, but I won't. I'll just say, why don't you go to our website, aerospacewalesforum.com, where we have all that information listed. But the landscape is unique, and we shouldn't forget how fortunate we are to be where we are. So, we also recognise that getting around Wales vertically is problematic because of transport.
Interesting, yeah.
But horizontally, we have got really good connections. I mean, let's face it, a border is just a dotted line on the map.
Yeah.
So we work very closely with our neighbours. So it's North West Aerospace Alliance up in North Wales, and in South Wales, it's the West of England Aerospace Forum, that horizontal corridor. But what you have got on the west coast of Wales is you've got all that open space. So that's actually really good for test and evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's segregated airspace, so people can go and do that exploration. They can look to see if things work, which is very exciting and very unique to Wales as well. So the capabilities, they are so broad. And even having been in this job for 8 years, I'm still finding out what companies are doing. And sometimes it's frustrating that companies innovate, but they don't realize they're innovating. They have their own challenges in how they're so busy doing their day-to-day work that sometimes they don't come up and tell us about the exciting things that are happening. And then they'll have a challenge and they'll find a way to get around that or to improve on that. And it's really innovative. And they just don't recognize it because it's just their day-to-day job. Yeah. And that is something we're always crying out for as Aerospace Wales. We would love to showcase the good work that you're doing. So please tell us those good news stories and we can put it on LinkedIn and put it in our socials and our newsletters. So the breadth and capabilities are immense. And actually, if you took the time to have a look what's happening in Wales, you'll probably blow your socks off.
That's fantastic, and we'll make sure that the links to the website are in the description, and hopefully, if I get the editing right, down below as well. So, obviously, this is a human factors podcast. We human factors practitioners are a bit few and far between. If we wanted to come and get involved in Aerospace Wales, how do we do that? What's the mechanisms?
Yeah, so anybody can become a member. Roughly, we'll do a bit of due diligence, but we have members not just based in Wales, but also throughout the UK and overseas as well, because they recognise the value we can bring just in the connections that we can make, as well as everything else we do. And if people want to know, is this for us? Then maybe our LinkedIn, if you can put up our LinkedIn address, might be a good way to start to learn more about the activities we do. We keep that really updated. So you can see the sort of things that we're involved in and the sort of thing that our companies are involved in as well. And then, interestingly, I'm starting to plan a members meeting for later in this year. It's going to be September, October time now, where I am actually going to look at human factors. I'm going to base my members meeting around that because we do so many meetings and events on digitalization, looking at AI, looking at robotics. And sometimes I think we forget that we need to take the people with us on these journeys.
Yeah.
I think there's something missing here. That there's a message. Don't get me wrong, companies might already be doing this and thinking like this, and probably the larger ones are, but the smaller ones, perhaps all they are hearing is this digitalization. And I need to make sure they're not feeling alienated or left behind. So later in the year, I am looking to do an event on human factors. I'm going to pinch your phrase there. And we'd be very happy to have people who are non-members come along, and they can find out a bit more about us, what we do, and get to know what we're all about.
That sounds amazing. Really looking forward to that one. In the grand scheme of things for Aerospace Wales, what does good look like? What does success look like? How do you know you've achieved at the end of the day or the end of the year?
A lot of the time it's blind. So this is, like you said earlier, it seems like I do just go off and do things and hope that people follow me and I'm doing the right thing. So there are a number of ways that I think success works, and that is by looking at how our events are run and the information we provide. Like I say, we had an event yesterday. We had over 60 member companies there. It seemed to go really well. We do try and do 4 members meetings each year, 2 in North Wales, 2 in South Wales. And the fact that people are coming to those, that must be doing something right. The fact that we've not just maintained our membership levels, but we've grown our membership levels. People would be dropping out and saying, we don't want to pay this fee anymore, we're getting nothing out of it. If it wasn't working for them. If we didn't always have too many people applying to come to trade shows with us than we have space for. And then also at an organisational level, I think that we've got 100% retention levels with our staff is a really good sign of success, because if we've not got a happy workforce, I think people would pick up on that. So the fact that we've got a happy, passionate team that want to go out and engage and are so enthusiastic makes a big difference too.
So you've spoken a lot about the different types of companies you get involved with. You going basically around the world promoting the Wales and the capabilities and stuff. That all sounds really wicked. What do you if you had to pick one thing or a couple of things, what are the coolest things you've done?
There is one seriously cool thing that I've done, which was I had a phone call, so it's probably about 4 years ago, from a company that we deal with in North Wales, Aerocare, and they historically refurbish business jets, is the nice way to put it. And they were working alongside a company looking at a new electronic avionics system, and they needed to do a test flight. And they wanted to know if I'd like to join them on the test flight.
Nice.
So for years, I'd been to their facility, and whenever in the hangars, they have the business jets, I'd like peek my head through and say, oh, can I ever sit down on those sumptuous leather seats? And they're like, this is somebody's plane, Rachel. No, you can't do that. So this is my opportunity to actually go in a business jet. So I tried to forget about that they were testing avionics and electronics. I thought if it was something really crucial, they wouldn't be taking passengers with them. And we got in at Harding, and we went all the way up to Cumbria, around the lakes and back down again. It was amazing. And I wish I could afford to say that's the only way I'm going to travel from now on. So yes, being in a business jet is probably the coolest thing I've ever done.
And see, now all the companies who are listening to this, that there's a standard been set there now. Who can improve on Rachel's coolest thing?
I would love to hear from you.
I was going to say, I feel like now that should be an annual challenge. That's brilliant. I think that's given us a really good insight into Aerospace Wales. So we're going to take another quick break, and then we'll get into the final 3 questions.
It's to the final 3. My name's Nick Rome. Let me tell you about this. Technology in our world is evolving at a phenomenal pace, and keeping up with what that means in the human factors world can be challenging. That's where Human Factors Cast comes in. Human Factors Cast is a weekly podcast that highlights and breaks down stories that are chosen by you, the Human Factors community.
New York State is giving out hundreds of robots as companions for the elderly.
Buttons in cars are safer and quicker to use than touchscreen.
A prototype just achieved a major milestone that actually fits the description of a flying car.
The show provides perspective based on experiences from different domains and different industries. We even cover some of the hottest conferences in the field. On this episode, we're recapping EHF, Ergonomics and Human Factors Conference, Neuroergonomics Conference, Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, UXPA International. Join me, Nick Rome.
And me, Barry Kirby.
Every Friday morning when Human Factors Cast drops on YouTube and your favorite podcast directory. And remember,
It depends.
And now I'm going to send it back over to Barry for the final three.
Great, and welcome back. So, Rachel, these are the three questions of everybody who comes on the podcast, mainly because I like to get inspiration and find out about what the sort of things you read and what you think about life. So let's start off with your favorite book or paper or something that you use repeatedly. It could be a technical paper or it could be a fiction book. Is this something that you go back to all the time?
I love reading. So, you know that old phrase that when you get a job that you love, you never work another day in your life. I think
Yes.
that is absolutely true with me now. But it also means that you never totally switch off. So, even when you're watching TV in the evening, there's still work ideas pinging, or I must remember to get in touch with so-and-so, I've not heard from them for a while. So, TV, you could work still infiltrates, and I think it's really important that you do actually try and stop thinking about aerospace and defence and what's happening in the world. So books are my go-to, and I just adore reading. So I started really young. So when I was little, I always had my head stuck in a book, and when I was about 12, I discovered Agatha Christie. So I was probably far too young then, Agatha Christie. But my mum and dad didn't know any better. They didn't really know how graphic it was. So I devoured. So I get an author and I devour their entire works. I don't know, something in my head. Once I start, I can't stop. So I'd done all of Agatha Christie when I was young. You can read back at them now and you just think, goodness me, how times have changed. You know, just some of the language used, it just wouldn't be acceptable today, which actually when you reread them, it's really interesting from a historical point of view and just to see how society has changed. And then during lockdown, I'd read a couple of Georgian set books set in the Georgian era, and there was a particular author, Georgette Heyer, and I set myself the challenge of reading all her 56 books during lockdown. And what I have discovered is that I really enjoy books that have nothing to do with life today. Okay. So where I can, I mean, there's enough horrible things, you know, listening to the news, watching thrillers on TV, which can kind of be a bit depressing or a bit angsty. I just want to take myself to somewhere else and just relax and be absorbed. So I love Georgian era type historical. I could call them romances, but they're not the Barbara Cartland type. They're a bit more interesting than that. And then I've recently discovered fantasy and dragons. I mean, like, Rachel, you know, you're over 50 now, you shouldn't be reading these sort of books. But the fact that they allow for complete escapism, that's what I want from a book. And any book that stops me thinking about what's going on in the world around me is good for me. So I absolutely adore reading. It's my favourite pastime.
Fantastic. I think there's a lot to dip into there. I kind of get an idea you might be a fan of Bridgerton and stuff and that when it comes around, or you're not a TV person?
I do like Bridgerton. It is a bit bodice ripping. I like the phrase on the books that I read that they're more drawing room than bedroom. But Bridgerton just has that is one thing that I can just watch, and that is just so sumptuous. It is a joy on the eyes, a feast on the eyes to watch.
Yes. If you could go back in time to any point in your younger life, what advice would you give to your younger self?
My key piece of advice is when your grandparents and your aunties and uncles used to say, what are you going to do when you're older? I now look back and I think it's all right to say, I don't know. I am willing just to ride the wave, see where life takes me. And I can look back now, and thanks to you, Barry, taking me back today, I can look back and see that all those different experiences have made me the person that I am and given me insights that I wouldn't have had if my career path hadn't been so varied. If I'd have set my heart on being something, as being a teacher or being something, I could have been disappointed. And then what would I have done with myself? I never realised that it was okay to not know what you would do when I was younger. And that is the advice that I would give my younger self. Don't worry about it. Just keep the faith. Everything will work out.
And I think that is particularly poignant for human factors practitioners, because very few people go through. People on the podcast have heard me say this before. You don't go through school wanting to be an ergonomist or a human factors practitioner because you've never heard of it. You want to be a nurse, a doctor, a firefighter, or something like that. And particularly now, you will tend to find out about ergonomics and human factors because you're doing something else, say within defence, within aerospace, and you find out, oh, there's somebody else doing that, and it's all right to switch, transition, follow what is interesting you at the time.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how it's been.
So let's fast forward a whole bunch of years to you decide that you've taken over as much of the world as you can handle for now, and you decide you just want to read some books and not worry about everything else. You decide to retire. What would you like to be remembered for?
So from more of a tangible point of view, I set up the Aerospace Wales Showcase Expo, and this was one of these moments where I had one of my ideas, and I kept on thinking, build it and they will come. And historically, so much of the activity in Wales is centred around Cardiff and around South Wales, and I wanted to do something in North Wales, and I wanted our companies to be able to showcase what they did. So I thought, you know what, if I just build an exhibition. But I wanted it more than just that. So I wanted it meet the buyer as well. I wanted a small conference. You know me now, Barry. If I want to do something, it's going to be big, and I wanted to do it. So this is where I was really fortunate that John said, I have faith in you, Rachel. If you think it will happen, go for it. So I worked with an amazing team as well at New Tech. And we put on the first event 6 years ago now. And we've held it every other year. So we've had 3. And we have had over 500 exhibitors, over 1,000 delegates. We've held something like 1,500 meet the buyer appointments. And I hope that will continue every other year as a showcase for our amazing companies in Wales, what they do, how they deliver it, and also to be able to build on those relationships. So the tier ones, the prime, those big companies, continue to engage with the smaller ones in a meaningful way. So on a tangible level, I hope that is my legacy and that continues. On a more personal level, I hope people will just look back and remember me with a smile. So although I'm a megalomaniac, not really what I want. I just want people to remember me fondly. And if I made a difference somewhere along the way, then brilliant.
Love that. That's absolutely fantastic. Rachel, thank you ever so much for taking out so much time. Given you do so much, I'm aghast that we could actually find an entire hour to get you on board. So thank you for sharing that. If people wanted to get in touch with you, find out about Aerospace Wales, find out about engage more with yourself, maybe they need to work out how to do their makeup. How would they go about doing that?
We would love to hear from people. We're always eager to hear what's going on in the world and what an impact you could be having with our members, because and with everything in life, you get out as much as you put in. So if you want to be involved and you think you could make a difference with us and some of our members, we would love to hear from you. So you can go to our website, aerospaceWalesForum.com, and that will, there's a contact us box on there, so you can contact us via that. You're very welcome to email us, just inquiries at aerospacewales.aero. And as I say, on LinkedIn, if you look up Aerospace Wales Forum, then we have over 20,000 followers. So there's lots of interesting activity taking place on there sort of daily. So yeah, many ways to get in touch.
Fantastic, and I can absolutely recommend the LinkedIn feed in particular. There's always stuff going on, and a really good way of keeping an eye on what's going on. If nothing else, even if you don't take it further. So, Rachel, that's brilliant. Thank you ever so much, and thank you all for listening and for watching. However you're digesting this this content, do like and comment and share through all the mechanisms you can. But if you've got questions or comments, do feel free to put them down there or get in touch with us directly, because we will answer them, we will engage with them, and getting your feedback is the key thing to how we evolve this podcast and this offering. So thank you all for engaging, and we will see you all on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Please do get in touch with your thoughts, questions, and comments. You can contact us on social media such as Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at 1202 Podcast. See you next time. And remember, it's more than just common sense.